Let's talk about robotics. And when people think about robots, they might think of the human like robots that are absolutely being invented and created and expanded across the scale. In fact, there's one here at the Human X conference that's dancing around. But really, a lot of the robots don't look human. They're doing the work of humans on factory floors. Andrea Thomaz is a CEO and co founder of Diligent Robotics, recently acquired by Serve. She is a renowned expert in social robotics. And Andrea, my first question to you is, when will we all be working for the robots?
I think that's a question we've been asking for a really long time, and the answer just keeps being that my personal opinion is that we will continue to find work that people would prefer not to do and build robots to work alongside people. So I think the better question is like what work do people want to do? Like what do we want to spend our days doing? And let's let the robots do the rest of it.
The robot you've developed is called Moxi and works in hospitals. And at first glance, people might be going, wait a minute, healthcare, there's life and death decisions being made there. How is a robot going to fit in? But there are also a lot of robotic functions that humans do that Moxi's doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of mundane work that happens. I mean, in any workplace, but especially hospitals and healthcare. We spend a lot of time actually just observing nurses and clinicians and trying to understand. My background is robotics. I'm not a clinician, so we didn't know very much about the operations of hospitals. But when you go and see what's really happening and how hospitals function, they have to function the way they do. They've been developed over years and years to be, optimal for quality patient care. But it does mean that there are people walking things around the building nonstop 24/7. There's medications that have to be picked up, there's lab samples that have to be delivered, there's equipment that isn't in the place that it needs to be. And so there's a lot of opportunity for robots to automate some of these transport tasks, and that's what our robots Moxi are running around hospitals 24/7, delivering things from a pharmacist to a nurse or from a nurse to a lab tech.
I'm assuming there was some reticence at first on the part of the medical community to embrace a robot doing the things that humans would do, but what's the status now?
Yeah.
There's people still a little skeptical, but they're seeing that they're doing some of the work.
Right. I mean, I think in general, like I've been giving, I was a robotics professor before starting this company, and anytime I would give a talk at a conference or the question is always, are these robots going to take over all the jobs? Are these robots going to take over? And so I think that is, for better or worse, that the way that people's mind goes first when you're thinking like, oh, we're bringing a robot to this hospital, and oh, like what's happening to all the nursing jobs? And the truth couldn't be further from the truth, that robots are not taking over jobs. And as soon as we are able to show the nursing teams, oh, this robot is going to go to the pharmacy so you don't have to, or this robot's going to go to the lab so you don't have to, it takes about 5 minutes for them to realize like, oh, this is amazing, I am excited about this. And then Moxi becomes really ingrained into the team. They dress Moxi up for birthdays and holidays, and it's really like kind of brings a little bit of joy to the workplace.
The medical staff, they're often having to do the rote kinds of things, and they are often understaffed, and they have a lot on their hands. And so sometimes the patient care suffers because they're trying to do too much. Have you found, practically speaking, that when the robot is doing other things that maybe it takes a bit of the weight off?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it's all about. Nurses can walk like 2 miles in a shift. And anytime they're walking around the building, they're not with their patients. That's just, by default. So, I think that is the primary benefit that we're offering, is letting clinicians stay where their work happens. And we certainly hear that from patients. You'll see patients in the hallway. We've been stopped when I've been visiting hospitals. I've been stopped by patients' families, and they get it right away. They're like, this is so amazing. This means that my nurse doesn't have to leave the department. My nurse is here when we need her.
I know you gave a TED Talk some time back, and you were talking about our vision of robotics. And everybody does want to know, when are we going to get those robots that clean our house and do all those things around the house that nobody wants to do, you know?
I know. I still think that it's coming, obviously, and there's a lot of people that are, bullish about how quickly it's going to get there. The biggest part of introducing robots into any environment is, very thoughtfully kind of designing what it is that we want these robots to do and how can they fit in a way that doesn't disrupt what's going on in that human environment. So like the home is like a very it's I think it's going to be a little while before there's a robot that doesn't just come in and you have to structure your home for the robot, that the robot can take advantage of the way your home already is. I think we're going to see robots go from a progression. You're going to start to see a lot more robots in semi-structured environments. So you're going to see a lot more robots in hospitals, in every commercial building that you go into. So before we see robots in the home consistently, you're going to start to see robots out in your everyday life a lot more. I
See
think we'll
them in
go
the
through,
workplace
yeah,
first.
we'll go through this period of seeing them in the workplace or seeing them where you go to shop, and then, eventually those robots will be ready to assist people at home.
I mean, by definition, robots are not human. And there's a big concern, I think, among people, first about jobs, of course, but also just about the humanity. Are they empathetic? Are the companies that are making these, are they empathetic toward humans? So where are we with that? I mean, you're an expert in social robotics, and I'm assuming that's part of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question that we as a society should be pushing the developers of these technologies to be thinking about the human impact, being empathetic, like you said. And I do think that trust is going to be a big part of how quickly these robots get adopted. But there are some really interesting, I think, there's some places where you can actually increase the human experience by adding a robot to the home. If you think about elder care in particular, the quality of life that someone has as they're aging and, less able to take care of themselves, you have a couple of options. You can, move from your home into a facility where people are there to help you. You can have family members or hire people to come into your home, and it's an invasion of your privacy. You have to now have people in your home. If we could have technology that you could have into your home, it allows you to live longer independently, like you feel like you own that independence, even though you're being assisted by a robot or technology. So I think if we think
Give
about
me a few
the
examples of that.
impact,
So
yeah.
I haven't had an elderly mom who passed away, but she started to decline and she needed help with some tasks around the house. Like, so to what degree can robots actually provide that?
Today, that's not possible at all, I would say. But that is, I think, the best use case that we can think of for robots entering the home. And I do think it's one of the use cases that's really going to drive, robots and automation coming to the home.
What tasks are we talking about there, though?
The tasks that most people are focused on, if you're thinking about like a robot that could come and take care of an elderly person in their home, you're going to look at the activities of daily living. So how do I help a person get dressed? How do I help a person clean themselves? How do I help them go to the bathroom? And how do I help them eat? And so, there's a set, there's kind of a small set of tasks that if a person can do those activities of daily living, then it's okay for them to stay in their house by themselves. And maybe you can do all but one of those things well. And so there would be a need to have robotic assistance or automation for assistance with eating or assistance with getting dressed.
It's so exhausting to be a caregiver. So
Yeah.
any kind of help like that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
absolutely.
So tell us about social robotics. The name implies that these are the ones that deal with people.
Yeah, so social robotics, you can think of it as anytime you're going to put a robot into an environment where they're going to interact with people, either as part of their task, like I'm here as a robot to give you some food, or that's a social robot. That's an interaction that you have to have with humans. But, a lot of the people in hospitals, for example, that our robots interact with, it's just part of they're not specifically interacting. They're just in the hallway and our robots are coming by. So I think there's a lot. So we're putting a robot into a human social environment. And so when you do that, you have to think very explicitly about how that robot behaves and how people are going to react to it. And if you don't make that part of the design process, you're gonna like accidentally build something that people don't expect, or they don't understand how the behavior is. So an example is our robot has a head and a face with eyes on it, and that head can move around and give everyone around the robot an indication of what the robot's paying attention to, what it's about to do. And so you compare that to a robot that's just a cart that's driving down the hall. People kind of give the cart a really wide berth. They don't really know what it's going to do. So those are kind of the subtle things that feel like, oh, that's cute that they put a face on the robot, but it actually, has a really like strong implication to how that robot fits into the human environment.
Social robotics is one chunk of robotics. How does social robotics fit into the overarching subject of robotics?
Sure. Yeah. I think robotics is it's a very multidisciplinary field, and there are, aspects where you can drill down and think about like one part of how robotics works. Like I am, working on motors and controls and some of the low level hardware advancements of robotics. I'm working on manipulation. How do robots use their hands to do things? I'm working on navigation. How does the robot like find a path through an environment? Social robotics and human robot interaction is you have to have the whole robot system working, and you're thinking about how does the human robot system work. So in one sense, we're operating at kind of a meta level. We have to take the best advances from all areas of robotics and now figure out how to put that in a human context.
Recently, a robot tripped on a stage and people cheered, which, I sort of get. Like, people are like, well, good, we still need humans, I suppose. And maybe that's why they're cheering. But it's my understanding, and you tell me, but that, look, the robots of just yesterday, of just last year, are even sort of becoming obsolete, that it's advancing at such a high pace. And is that because with AI, they're learning? They're able to, progress more quickly now than, say, they were a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot of hardware and sensor advancements that have happened over the last few years. Pair that with advances in AI that, as robots out there collecting, as you collect more data, you can build better models. But to be clear, the models and the robots that are the physical AI models and that are deployed on robots today are still pretty preliminary. I mean, it's very much, we're seeing complex actions like dancing or backflips or things where you can take a recording of a person doing that thing. And we're getting really good at building models that can take a recording of a person doing a specific thing and putting that on a robot. But that doesn't mean that if anything changed about the environment, that robot would be able to do the thing. Versus like you put a person in one room or another room, they're going to be able to do the same task. There was a interesting finding just a couple weeks ago that some of the AI models for robots doing really interesting, complex things with their hands. Turned out they were very sensitive to the height of the table that objects were put on. And that's just because that was all the data that they had seen in training, that the tables happened to be 30 inches tall. And if you then ask them to do the same task, like on your bar stool table, like had trouble. So I think it just shows you like what's easy for people is not easy for robots.
So we're a long way away from that.
I would say yes.
So for the folks out there who might be watching who are a little nervous, they're nervous about jobs, they're nervous that things that are not human are going to be doing the things that humans have been doing for some time. What's your message to folks out there as it regards robotics?
I mean, I think that as we are entering this era of robots are about to be able to be in your everyday life. You're about to be able to see robots in a lot of workplaces, in a lot of places that you go. We need to push back and think about, where do we want them? Like, what's the right use of robots? What are the things about any particular job that are mundane that you'd rather give up to a robot? And I think that it's empowering. So I think people should think about this as an empowering moment of deciding what it is that people are best suited for and where we should spend our time.
Andrea, Thomaz, thank you very much for helping explain robotics to our viewers and listeners.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.